Hello and welcome to the 5-Minute Sound Designer, where I'll show you a cool new sound design technique, tool, or tip, concept, whatever it may be, in about 5 minutes or less. So in today's video, what we're going to do is talk about volume, or technically it's amplitude. Volume is the perception of how loud something is, so something that's loud to you may not be loud to me. Amplitude is kind of the actual objective measurement of how loud something is. So I'm saying volume, but really I mean amplitude. Just want to get that out of the way. So we're going to talk about volume or amplitude balancing in this video. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to go about it, but there's two really common things you're going to run into in software like Adobe Audition, which is what I'm in here, or Audacity, Isotope RX, whatever it may be. It's very, very common. DAWs like Logic, Reaper, anything. So one feature you're going to see a lot, and you may have to deal with a lot, especially when you're doing sound design for games and have hundreds of assets to work with, is something called normalization or normalize. So you can see that here. Now, what normalizing a sound does is it turns the loudest part of that signal up to whatever we designate, in this case, negative 0.1 decibels, while also turning everything else up in that signal relative to how loud this loudest peak got. So that's a weird explanation, but I'll hit normalize to negative 0.1 and it'll become a lot clearer visually. So I click that and the dynamic range stays the same. So the difference between the loudest part and the softest part stays the exact same, but the volume or amplitude of the overall signal was turned up so that the loudest part of the signal gets to negative 0.1 decibels. So the sound itself is the same in terms of dynamic range, but it is louder overall. So relative from loudest to quietest is the same, but the overall amplitude of it is louder, and the highest signal is at negative 0.1 decibels. So now if I play it, it'll be quite a bit louder. And it's at negative 0.1 decibels, so it doesn't clip. You can see that it didn't clip here. There's no red markers. So now next up, you'll also run into a feature known as hard limiting or limiting compression. Limiting is just a term for very, very, very aggressive or steep compression. Now, what hard limiting does is it just cranks the overall signal as much as it can. It's basically a very aggressive compressor, so that the loudest signal will be negative 0.1, but instead of keeping the dynamic range the same, the difference between the loudest and softest signal the same, it'll just turn everything up as best it can. So if I hit hard limit to negative 0.1, you'll see that the whole sound got louder. And I can just keep doing this over and over and over and over again, till you can see that the overall sound starts to kind of look like a big block, kind of a brick. So what limiting can do is just crank up the signal overall as a very simple explanation, and can kind of keep the overall volume or amplitude of the sound the same throughout most of it. So this whole section here has the exact same amplitude versus this kind of tailed, which also got turned up. But if I undo and go back to our normalized version, you can see that we have a significant amount of peaks and valleys. This is a more dynamic signal. It has more loud signals to soft signals, essentially. Now, both of these are good. You may need one, you may need another in certain cases. If you like the overall dynamics of the sound and you don't want to change it, then use normalize. But if you want everything in that whole sound or piece of music or whatever it may be to get louder, then limiting or compression will be your best bet, to put it very, very simply. So that's it for today's video. Use this stuff in your games because volume balancing can get really, really strange and really finicky. You may need to use both of these pretty frequently with whatever projects you're working with. So if you like this video, do all the silly YouTube stuff of thumbs up and comment and subscribe and all that good stuff. And also sign up for my newsletter where I send out weekly game, audio, and game industry career tips. So for those of you who want to work in the game industry professionally and actually make a living from it, sign up for that newsletter because that's where I share all my best advice and tips. And also watch my TED Talk. I gave a TED Talk on video game music. I think I'm the only one who's ever done that so far. So go watch that, check it out, comment under the video of that as well. And you can click on all the annotations or in the description below for all those details. So thanks so much. I'll talk to you next time.